Welcome to the Africa 2100 podcast, the show where we explore the future of business, innovation, and entrepreneurship on the continent. Join us as we dive into real stories, expert insights, and practical strategies to help you build, scale, and succeed. Whether you're a founder, investor, or changemaker, this is your go-to space for ideas that shape the next generation of African businesses. Let's get started.
Hello there. Quick one before we begin today's episode. We've noticed that 80% of you, our listeners, haven't hit the subscribe button yet. And we understand, sometimes you just forget. I would like you to know that subscribing is the best and totally free way to support this podcast. It helps us reach more people, grow this amazing community, and keep bringing you insightful conversations with brilliant minds across Africa and beyond. So if you're listening and learn something new each time, do us a tiny favor. Hit that subscribe button now, wherever you're tuning in from. Okay, let's get on with the episode. So Satyender meets Dr. Claude Adam Callery, and Dr. Claude Adam Callery meets Dr. Satyender Goel. So,
hello, hi, Doctor.
How are you?
Dr. Claude, nice to meet you.
Two doctors in the house.
So, like not Satyender? Is that how you pronounce it?
Satyender,
yes.
Would that? Okay, beautiful,
right.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So Satyender is also located, based in Chicago. He just happens to be in India at the moment. So he's a man who's always traveling globally. So today's, we're going to be talking about the fact that most founders and entrepreneurs typically start their businesses based on their passion. However, word on the street is that the businesses that typically succeed or that have a higher chance of succeeding are those that solve a problem. So why is that? Adam, you want to help us understand that? I know, putting you on the spot.
So I'm going to rephrase the question. So the question is, today it appears that many more business owners are claiming that they're starting their business based on their passion, their drive to do something and to do it now. However, if we look at data may reveal that businesses that have shown historic performance, in this case, successful performance, have been those that have targeted a particular marketplace. I think the reason why we're seeing the rise of the passion core is that many people are just hungry for opportunity. I think when we look at the economy here in the U.S., so we're going to focus on the U.S., the economy in my lifetime has changed so significantly. We've moved from having a manufacturing focused economy to a service economy. And what does that mean? It means that before, if I was looking for opportunity, I wanted to leave my home after high school and start to work, I could go down to the local factory and pick up a part-time position. There were so many positions in that factory that over time, I could go from part-time to full-time and eventually maybe even become a manager of my own department within that manufacturing hub. I had no desire to start a business. I had no need to start a business because I had enough income coming in from me, my family, or my growing family at that time, depending on how my lifestyle was changing. Today, we are a service economy. And with a service economy, in most cases, most people are not making enough money to pay rent. You know, if I'm paid minimum wage, it is minimum wage. It may cover for groceries, but it's not going to cover for groceries, rent, and a car note. And so now people are on this almost hustle mentality. I have to do something to bring some extra money in. And oh, by the way, someone told me I can do that through entrepreneurship. And the barriers to entry are very low when it comes to entrepreneurship because it doesn't take much to start a business. Maybe doing business as name, maybe paying $200 for a business license here in the city of Chicago, and I'm up and running. Now, that doesn't mean that I've actually created a business. It just means I've started something. And I feel some level of accomplishment because I did just that. I'm starting something, and this something is going to help me resolve a burning issue. And that burning issue is I need money in my pocket. And this is the quickest way to get there, because no one's hiring me for a higher paying job. And oh, by the way, these service jobs out here aren't paying enough. So this hustle is going to allow me to supplement my income and allow me to live the dream that I want to live.
The hustle. So it's really, how do you get beyond the hustle? So Satyender, you want to take a pass at that? Why do businesses that solve real problems have a higher chance for success? And how did you figure out what problem your business will solve?
Thanks, Chudi, first of all, for having me on this session. So I will take a different take on the same question you asked. And starting a business, the passion is kind of a must, right? Everybody has it. Now, when you are starting a new business and you are not a big enterprise, how do you sell what solution you are building, or whatever product services you're launching? To be able to sell something to somebody, you need to be able to talk about it. You need to be able to demonstrate why what you're doing is relevant to anybody. And the easiest one to do is to identify a solution to a problem so people can easily relate to it. So, and you know, and everybody else does, is that um, selling, if you can't sell it, then it won't work anyway. So I think the answer is very simple. If you are starting a business new, unless you are somebody people know or you're a big enterprise, solving a problem is less riskier, more potential to succeed, versus just doing something passionately and creating the market demand alongside building product services business. So that's my simple take on it. And the second question, I think, yeah, and you can also look at the example, right? iPhone was launched by Apple because Apple could launch it. Would anybody else succeed launching something which was not needed?
So I have a follow-up statement here. And this is something that Satyender pointed out. And I'm wondering, when you look at the base of the question is clearly, shouldn't we all be developing businesses that address the needs and wants of our consumer? And the answer is yes. But then the question is also asking, are those companies more successful? And I think we got to take a step back and think about that for a minute. As I go through the Chicago community now, we have a creative community here. That creative community does graphic arts, they do web development, they do advertising, they do audio tracks for commercials. And this particular community thrives on collaboration. And they're highly, highly passionate. So if we just say, what's the measure of a successful company? Did you generate revenue? Are you profitable? So if I went into this creative community, guess what? They've generated revenue and they're profitable because they've built it on collaboration. They're very passionate about what they do, and they've been able to find a community that will buy from them, needs and wants kind of thing. Now, the thing is, they may not be the size of Apple, in 2 or 3 years, but should we be using that as the measure? Should we use corporations, in this case, Fortune 500, as the ultimate measure of success of any entrepreneurial enterprise? Or is it, you started it, you generated revenue, you are profitable, and it is satisfying your particular need and want or strategy as a small business owner, independent of its size, independent of the reach that it has. So I'm going to throw that out on the table.
Oh, absolutely right. It's always relative. It was just a simple thing to say. It's easy. It's as questioning. Going back to the question, it is probably easier to justify solving a problem customers' loyalty is easier to earn when you tell the story that you were doing it because it solves the problem and you can find success faster. But that doesn't mean that the other success is not possible. But I totally agree with you, 100%.
Yeah, I think it's a relativity issue.
Mhm.
It's not that you cannot be successful pursuing your passion only.
Yeah.
It is that, as I understand it, it's more an issue of, do I have a higher chance of succeeding if I'm solving a problem in the market, if I'm fixing a pain that somebody else has? And the question is, how do you go about figuring out what pain is worth solving? What problem? How do I figure out which problem should I go solve with my business?
And I'll say in many cases they've done that. If we stay in this passion-driven entrepreneurial space, in many cases they have defined what they think the need is. I think one thing that we will probably be leading to in this discussion is that you can't just be passion-driven and not understand that you need training and education in this space. So you do need some business acumen. You do need to understand accounting. You do need to understand the role that financing plays within this space. So you're not just let's call it the stage performer. When you're an entrepreneur, you're just out there performing and you're giving out your business cards and everybody's applauding the fact that you started a business. You're more than that. You are a manager of this operation. And so now you have to learn those skills to be a manager, in addition to being the performer, being the spokesperson of the business, being the guiding star for that business.
And to add to that, and Chudi, I think that's a very good question. How do you find a problem to solve? In my opinion and experience, we find problems which are not solved every day. I see them all around me. Just maybe being an entrepreneur myself, I have a knack of seeing inefficiencies. But I feel the problems you really want to tackle or solve and make a business out of it is the problem which is close to your core strength. You could be an engineer, could be a business business grad, or you might have coding skills. So I think you want to focus on problem which you think you are good at solving. You don't want to I mean, I am in healthcare. I know how healthcare works, so I don't want to start solving a problem which is retail sector or finance. Just because the problem exists doesn't mean I'm good person to solve it. So I would say that somebody should look at their own strength to tackle the problem which they face.
How did you go about validating the problem you set out to solve with your business or your venture?
Um, that's an interesting one. My personal story being, I've done multiple businesses. The very first one we started was the software business, solving the problem which we faced for ourselves, being the consumer of the solution for ourselves. So once we have done that, and I can talk about more about the business, but once we have done that, we made that available to others at no cost, up until everybody wanted to do it. That, oh well, this looks good, it solves the problem, I am okay to use it. And then eventually you ask for, would you pay for it? And they paid for it. Once they paid for it, that gives us the courage, meaning somebody's not only using it, they're willing to pay for it. We went and raised capital, and then we launched it in a commercial domain. So that was the first business I did. That was I think that's the best way to do it. Not everybody gets to that stage. Some solutions take longer and they cannot be tested. But the best way to do it is find a customer who can use it first, validate it that they like it. Second, if they can pay for it, perfect.
So, Adam, you had talked about it's not just putting up your shingles, it's not just registering the business. You need to have some understanding of the accounting. You need to have some understanding about the sales and all this. Are there some specific steps that when one says, okay, this is a problem I want to solve and I'm passionate about it, are there steps that each person can take to validate that this is a worthwhile business solution? Satyender started to talk about some of them, that of how he took in identifying his own, or validating his own problem, making the transition into turning it into a business entity. What specific steps, if any, do you see or will you recommend?
That's a very, very tough question. And here's the reason.
That's all I do.
Yeah, no, I was listening to my colleague, and he professed why he started the business, and he identified a problem to solve. And when we started this discussion, we were talking about passion versus being a problem solver. So as he was speaking, I thought about my origin story. My origin story is that I'm in that passion group. So when I first entered into entrepreneurship, I entered under the definition of entrepreneur, that entre to be and the prendre to do, to be a doer, to be, create something, right? And the reason why I was creating it the reason I created it was to solve a problem. The problem was very personal. And then this is something that we teach in undergraduate. My problem was unemployment. I needed it to close an income gap because I had been laid off from my job and I had a family. So the question is, how do I close that gap and close it quickly? And as it turned out, I had a real estate license at the time because I wanted to be a real estate investor. So the thought was here, grand plan is that I would work. And as I'm working full time, I would buy properties. And over time, I would accumulate enough property. So when I retired, I would have this portfolio of properties. Sounded like a very educated, plan, seemed like a very logical plan. It was supposed to work perfectly, for 10 years. But it didn't happen because one side of the equation fell through. I was laid off. So now I have the lifeline of this thing called a real estate license. And I said, I'm going to leverage this real estate license to close this financial gap. So now, the premise of the question is, I'm out here running a business to satisfy a need. Well, the need is very personal. Ultimately, though, and this is going to tie to your question, in order for me to be effective as a real estate agent, which is what I became, I had to understand the needs and wants of my customer to the point where they would prefer me over 1,000 other real estate agents out there. That they would seek me out and say, I would work with you. And so when you think about the stages I had to go through, one of those stages was understanding the industry that I had entered. And when I talk with businesses today, I stress that to them, that they need to understand the industry they're in. So they understand who they're competing against, but they also understand their customers' needs and wants. They understand their hidden, we used to call it the secret sauce. What is the thing that's going to make my business so much more competitive compared to my competitors so that customer will seek me out? I also started to know that I needed some more training around how a business operates. So I needed to understand accounting more. I couldn't take it for granted. So the stages were, 1, understand the industry that I'm in. I mean, really understand the industry that I was in. Understand how the business needs to perform in that industry. And then I decided I needed to seek out some personal educational pieces, learn more about accounting, learn more about goal setting. I mean, in this case, long-term goal setting, learn more about being an observer of the economy and understanding how economic forces could start to impact my business. So those 3 things: learning the industry, learning what it meant to build a business that was going to be successful in that industry, and then identifying what gaps I had in my background that I needed to close quickly in order to be able to address the various functions of the business, the finance and the accounting, the marketing, and the general management side.
Thanks, Adam. There is talk about to roll out your product or service, what is typically referred to as minimum viable product, MVP. Satyender, did you utilize that process? And if so, can you help us understand what is typically referred to, or what's folks talking about when they say, do you have an MVP, or you should have an MVP before you get started or before you take anything to market? What does that mean?
Well, so minimum viable product, it relates to anything which is demonstrable solution to the problem you're solving. Does not have to be complete, but does have to be something your potential client, customer, collaborator can test, validate that it does solve the problem which you are saying it solves. In general, product life cycles are long, meaning let's take an example. If you want to build a transaction e-commerce platform, that would require you to have a beautiful front end. You have to have a cloud hosted efficient back end. You need to take care of all the security protocols. You need to be able to so the life cycle to build a fully functional secure product which enterprise can launch or can clients can use, whether it's directly consumers or businesses, it takes longer time. So but if you were to think about the same solution without building a fully accepted user interface, hosting into the cloud, looking into all the security certifications, compliances, you can just build a simple code and give it to a client to test it. Not on the user, not on the actual data, just to do it on the test data and see whether the outcome they are expecting is good enough. I think that's called MVP. But in my opinion, it's just part of the life cycle. Good to do the MVP because that gives you, or that gives founders better leverage in making something, at least the core part of the solution, hardening it to provide the exact value clients are looking for. But it doesn't stop. MVP builds into the alpha release to beta release to first phase to second phase. It's all about building something, getting the feedback, and becomes the life cycle in general. So the short stories start early.
So we've spent a lot of time talking about the starting point, how you get started, what happens, whether you're a problem solver, whether you're passionate. But what about remaining relevant? Adam, are there things that the entrepreneur needs to keep doing to make sure their business stays relevant? Yes, they had a wonderful launch. They got the business going. Now, as you mentioned, they have revenue. What do they need to do if they plan to continue to stay relevant and scale?
Well, I think the discussion you just had was very, very relevant to your question. Because you think about MVP or just VP, value proposition, and you sit back and say, well, I've developed this item for the marketplace. It's been tested. I've had surveys done. The prospective clients seem to like it. The thing that we sometimes forget about that this is not a project that we're working on. We're trying to start a business. And therefore, we have to change our mindset from something that is static, meaning I created this new thing, this prototype, and I'm really excited about it. And everybody I showed it to is very excited about it. But now you have to replicate this. This product has to now be produced, and it's got to be produced in great quantities. If it's software, I'm not producing it over and over again, but I need to maintain it. I need to be able to fix any bugs that may arise. I may have to be able to secure it from hacks. So that's the business piece. Now I have to start to wrap around this prototype a functioning business that can replicate services over and over and over again for every new client that comes to the door. Every new client has to have the very same experience as my pilot group did. My pilot group loved what I created. They loved the service that I created. They loved the product that I created. But now they're gone now. Now I'm going to the general public, people who have similar traits and similar buying behaviors. And I'm trying to get them to keep coming back to me now. And I have to now have a system in place where I can replicate this. And I think that's the one thing entrepreneurs may miss if it's the replication that's required to scale a business. And the replication, by what I mean by that is it's going to continue to grow. The number of cycles that you do are going to continue to grow as you add more people, as more people come to your front door to buy. And each one expects to have the same experience as the very first customer that you add. And so as a leader or as a founder of your business, you have to think about that. What does it take to have the right employee who's been trained the right way? Do I have enough funding in place to make sure I have the right equipment and the right maintenance team? Do I have everything in place to be able to replicate the experience multiple times for not just tomorrow, but for the next 3 years, 5 years, for as long as I run this business? And keeping in mind, it will be changing, of course, over time. But I know in my mind, I want to replicate the same level of high quality service, or I want to replicate the same product that is dependable and reliable over and over again. And so I need to think about that systems approach. How do I be able to create something that's going to be long-standing and sustainable?
Satyender, how are you managing to keep your business relevant?
Consistency, stability, quality, of course, cannot be compromised. But I think generally when you start a business, your stakeholders, which are maybe your employees or investors or the market overall, are looking at you to continue growing in terms of number of users, number of the top line income generation, the product innovation. To stay relevant in the business, you need to be able to showcase that growth. And that sustained growth forces you to innovate. So for me, in the third business which I'm doing right now, as a medical device manufacturer, I have been. We built the first version of it, went to the market. We go to the market and we tell them, let them use it. They use it, but they always come back and give us the feedback. It would be good if it had this as well. We go back to the drawing board, add the new feature. We go back to them, and as Adam was just mentioning, you can't compromise not to deliver what their first experience was, but in fact, you have to expand on that experience. At the same time, you cannot just expand on that experience while you are not satisfying the requirement of your investors, that to be able to also generate revenue more than what you generated last month, last week, last year. You have to continue to generate that as well. So I think it's a balance of all together. But the idea, it's just that there is no going back. Once you start a business, you need to stay relevant. You need to continuously innovate to satisfy your customer needs, to meet your investors' demands, and to just showcase that the upward trajectory.
May I ask you a question? So I'm just curious. You mentioned that this is your third business. So what would you share with an individual that said, I can only do this one business? I created it. I'm wedded to it. I don't want to do anything else. Was there a set of criteria you had in your mind that you followed and said, okay, this is the first business. I've gotten to this point. I'm going to move on to the next one. Got the second one up and running. Say, you know what? I'm happy where I'm here. I'm going to move on to the next one. Was it a transition point? Was it a set of decisions you made to say, yes, this is the time to move on? What kept you from being wedded to any just one business and say, I have to stay attached to this one? I'm just curious.
Well, that's a very good question, but sometimes you don't have an option. Once you're an entrepreneur, you have probably get into that knack and get into this that you can't go back work for somebody. Uh, the first business I started that got acquired by our competitor. So it was not a failure or a success. It was successful. In general, it was considered successful because it got acquired, but I didn't have a choice, right? And we'll talk about it probably someday. As the idea is that why I didn't have a choice, even though I was one of the co-founder, because there are other forces which you can't avoid. So going back to what you said, sometimes it's some founders do get choice where they move on from one business to another because they lose the interest. There's not much innovation going on, or they merge with a bigger entity and they don't feel the same fun in doing something because the business has become large enough and it's stable. So there are several reasons business founders goes from one to two to three. But in my case, it's just the course it took.
Thanks, Satyender. Adam, did I give you what you were looking for?
Yes. I think it's important to hear. Sometimes when I'm coaching some business owners, they go, I gotta stay with this, no matter what happens. And I think that's a dangerous perspective, because you want to step back and remember, you're the founder and you're the manager. And you have to look at the business and say, what's happening with it? Is it working? Or in this case, are the customers really satisfied with my value proposition? Maybe I thought I knew what they wanted, but actually they don't want this. So do I continue to put more money into this? Or do I go ahead and take a step back and say, maybe I want to do something else? And so you could say, I've started this one, and maybe I can start another one. I do have another interest, so maybe I do want to pursue that other interest and not feel. I like how it was stated here. I don't feel I failed. I learned from the experience. So now that I've learned from that experience, I can do something else. I don't have to say I have to stay with this until it blows up. And I've seen some people go through that struggle, and the business does not succeed, and then they feel so bad about it. But the question is you gave it a shot. It just didn't work. It just wasn't the right concept for the right time. Or again, maybe the customer did not fully embrace your value proposition.
But that balance is so difficult.
Yes.
On one, we started with the idea that you need to be passionate to start a business, solve a problem. On the other end, you need to be realistic. And finding that balance for a founder is very, very difficult. I mean, I could empathize. At certain times, we should take the decision. We don't.
So, for me, it happened that way. We, again, I started off with property management. That's what I was going to do. And then 2008 came. And as people remember, 2008 was a financial crisis. And next thing you know, foreclosure. Now no one's thinking about buying property. Nobody feel like, even renters didn't want to feel like moving anymore. Developers had all these condominiums sitting there empty. So all of a sudden now they become rental properties. And they just devastated the market for us who were in older traditional apartment buildings. We couldn't compete against someone who has the opportunity to live in a condominium. And so I had to say, I got to get out of this. It was, my business was bleeding, and it's time to stop the bleeding. And so I had to move into something else. But it was a conscious decision based on how the market was changing.
So today's conversation has given us insights into why the best businesses are built around solving real problems. I've always looked at entrepreneurs as problem solvers. The most successful businesses are built on solving real problems, not just passion. Passion is great. But my fear is, if you're pursuing solely based on your passion and you're not addressing anybody's pains or problems the market is facing, then it's going to be hard to get customers. And as we all know, customers are the bedrock of any successful business. So identifying and validating market pain points ensures the product to market fit. Entrepreneurs must continuously innovate to stay ahead of evolving problems, just like Satyender shared with us. The only way you stay relevant is you need to continue to listen to your customers. You need to continue to have that feedback loop that informs future iterations or evolution of your product or services. And a problem-solving mindset helps create that sustainable growth and that customer loyalty, the stickiness of your customers. So I would like to thank both Adam, Dr. Claude Adam Callery, and Satyender Goel for the time here today. Whether you're just starting out or looking to refine your business model, the key takeaway is this: the bigger the problem you solve, the greater the value you create. If you know an entrepreneur struggling to find the right business idea, share this episode with them, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for more expert insights on building impactful businesses. See you next time.
That's it for today's episode of the Africa 2100 podcast. If you found value in this conversation, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. For more insights on building and scaling your startup, stay connected with us. Until next time, keep innovating, keep building, and let's shape the future of African business.